So do you remember back last when I visited, I think it was May, I said, would you, given the choice, rather have a PS4 or a PC? And you said a PC. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and I thought it'd be a good time. You know, your birthday just went by, and Allison and I haven't always been there for your birthday or for Christmas. And so, I don't know. I had the urge to build a computer, and I thought I'd build you a computer. So, here it is. What I'd like to do is talk about it part by part, and thought I'd just give you the completed perspective on this before I open up the side panel. So this has a tinted window with 4 screws, which kind of, at least in the video, I don't think you're going to be able to see very well what's going on inside here. But for the duration of this, I'm going to take the side panel off. So we can talk about what's going on inside the computer. So the first thing to talk about is, why did I build it with the components that I chose? And it actually started out with a motherboard. So this is a very nondescript box, but this is what it came in. It was a previously returned item, and not much to show you here. I mean, it came in the standard Alex wrap, anti-static wrap, and the reason I landed on this one was for a couple reasons. One was it is a micro ATX form factor, so it's not full ATX, nor is it mini ITX. It's kind of right in the middle there. I think micro ATX is 9.6 by 9.6 inch square, and I didn't want to do a full-size build. I just didn't want to build a giant box. I've built enough giant boxes in my time. I wanted sort of to do a mid-sized build, so that was one of my desires. And the second reason I landed on this motherboard was it has wireless capability. And so this is going to be useful, I think, because you don't have Ethernet, a hard line from your internet router to your room, and I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is going to be in your room. So at least on day one, I'm assuming you won't have Ethernet, and you can still turn this on, connect to your wireless, and mess around and play games and have fun. I've played a couple of games on here with the wireless, and it works great. Next thing to talk about is the chip that I picked out. So this motherboard is for Intel chips. It is a Socket 1151 Series 300, which is very confusing, since their previous socket was just called Socket 1151. The 1151 Series 300 is their modern and current socket for Intel chips, for the moment. So the chip I landed on was the i5 9600K, which is the unlocked version of this i5 chip. It is a 6-core, 6-thread, so no hyper-threading. Runs at the base clock speed of 3.7 gigahertz, but can upclock to 4.6, which is pretty high and pretty impressive. So yeah. You may or may not know this. I mean, Intel and AMD have been around for decades. Intel has basically had the strongest position, hands down, when it comes to gaming and CPUs. Only recently has AMD made a bit of a comeback, and I don't think I could have went wrong with either vendor, but like I said, the motherboard sort of dictated how things were going to go, and once I picked the motherboard, then I had to pick a good chip. Now, that being said, if you wanted to ever upgrade, there is headroom, quite a bit of headroom in this system when it comes to upgrading your CPU. You can go as high as a 9900K, which is an 8-thread sorry, 8-core 16 thread. So one of the most important things you have to keep cool in this system is your CPU. I have toyed around with water cooling in the past. It's great in terms of dissipating heat very efficiently. However, the way water coolers work is that you push air through a radiator. And radiators tend to have these very narrowly spaced fins, and they love dust. You will get a lot of dust if you have a water cooling setup, because houses have dust. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's that. I do tend to land on air cooling. I think it's easier to manage and maintain. But given that I have to ship this to you, it has to arrive safely. And here's the thing, a big air cooler can weigh as much as a pound. And having a pound sit on a motherboard and shake up and down as it moves across the country, bad idea, would not have worked. But an all-in-one cooler, water cooler, can do that, because the fan and radiator are mounted on the back very rigidly with 4 screws, and then the pump, which is integrated, is connecting these 2 tubes to the CPU block there, and it says Cooler Master on it. Cooler Master is a good name. I've used their air coolers in the past. They work great. They also make good fans. We'll talk about fans in a little bit. So this is probably one of the most well-rated, what you call a smaller all-in-one cooler. So it's 120 millimeter rad with a 120 millimeter fan. The way I've got it set up is it's sourcing cool air from the back. So the airflow is coming in, cold air comes in from the back, pushes air in that way, and then exhausts up. And I think that's going to be a good setup. I've done some stress testing, and yeah, it's going to be great. So the next thing, which is probably the coolest thing in the case, hands down, is this guy. So this is a NVIDIA-based card. Obviously the other big name out there is AMD with their Radeon series. Radeon cards are great cards. I've got one. It games like crazy. And there's been a lot of good competition between NVIDIA and AMD when it comes to GPUs of late. And this is a card that I've read about a lot. It is probably one of the best spec cards for the cost. It is the GeForce RTX 2060 Super. So the Super Series just came out a couple of months ago. It was in response to NVIDIA's response to AMD for about their new release of a couple of GPUs. And this is all good for us as consumers. The price war between those 2 big companies means we can get amazingly powerful hardware for not too much. So the nice thing about this card, in my opinion, is that it's got a full 8 gigabytes of memory, whereas the non-Super 2060 only had 6 gigabytes. I bought this as a third party through ASUS, same manufacturer as the motherboard. This has what's called the Aura Sync, which, as you can see, I think in the video, the card is breathing, so to speak, different colors. That's a neat feature. And I have run some synthetic benchmarks. We'll do a little bit of that later. And this card is so fast and so quiet. It's got 3 fans, and it has this capability where if the GPU is cool enough, the fans don't even spin. And I love quiet computers, and that's a brilliant design. It's only been out for a couple of years now. Not every vendor has that feature, which I think is an excellent feature in video cards because they're super quiet. But even when this thing has to spool up, it is still quiet because, as you can see, it is a 2.5 slot card, fins all the way across, full length, and 3 fans that will only spool up as needed. Next thing to talk about, This box doesn't really give you much of an indicator of what it is, but I can tell you that this is the box that the solid state drive came in. So this is not a typical solid state drive. When I say typical, that would mean a SATA connector going between the drive and the motherboard. This is what's called a NVMe M.2 solid state drive. So if I was to show you what one looked like, it looks like a stick of gum. It's not very big at all. This is a 1 terabyte drive. NVMe drives they don't have the same limitations as SATA drives. So even if you have a SSD SATA drive, it's got a theoretical peak performance of about 550 megabytes a second. These drives can go as high as 3,000 megabytes per second. So that's, gigabytes per second on reads and writes. This is the technology you want in a modern system when it comes to storage. You want to be using an M.2 NVMe drive. And that's what I put in there. This is made by Plextor. You can, and in fact, you can't even see it. Even if I got as close as I could with the camera, it's actually under the video card, under a heatsink that is dissipating the heat off of this guy. So I think that's a good choice as well. All right, so one thing I don't have a box for, but plainly sitting in front of us is the memory. So there are 2 DIMMs. They're each 8 gigabytes for a total of 16. It's DDR4 3200, which is a great middle speed right now for memory. Memory speeds have gone nuts of late, and 3200 is kind of that middle crossover point where things are stable, continuously stable, and you wouldn't see a great deal of difference if you were to go to a faster memory. Next is to talk about the case and the fan. So this is a Fractal Meshify Mini C. I've used a bunch of Fractal cases over the years. I love Fractal cases. I think they are simple, they're well built, they're handsome, they have a lot of options for cooling. The fans that came with it, I think it came with 1 exhaust fan and 1 intake fan. I went a little crazy on this build. I took out both of those fans and I put in 5 Noctua redos, or redux, I don't know how they want us to say it. These are all 4-pin PWM fans, which means that as the CPU or the system gets hot, they will spin faster. And the airflow strategy I've come up with is, like I said before, the CPU water block is sourcing air from the back. There's 2 140 millimeter fans in the front, both pulling air in, so we have air coming in from both sides. And then they have 2 140 millimeter fans exhausting air up. So airflow is like this. What's good about that is your CPU gets fresh air, your GPU is getting a nice cold air push through here, and lastly, we'll talk about this in a minute, but the power supply is here and it's configured to pull air like that. So it's not sourcing air from the bottom. Not a big fan of doing that. A lot more dust comes from the ground than does through the case. So yeah, Noctua is the best. I didn't hold back even slightly when I got this fan set. These are they're just the best fans you can get, honestly. And to have 5 of them, that's going to be the jam. We'll do some sound testing. I'll show you how quiet the system is even under stress in just a few minutes. Power supply. So I have had really good luck with EVGA over the past couple of years. I think other people have too. They have really good ratings. This is a full modular 750 watt. It's from their G2 line. they've since come out with the G3 and in maybe even a GX since this one, but I like this one. This one was sort of that power supply where once they went to G3, they went a little bit smaller, which means they had to change their construction a little bit, and they haven't been as reliable since the G2. So the G2 was sort of this peak in time where it was really well built power supplies by EVGA. I've got this exact model in my big gaming box, and it's been a workhorse, and it should last a really long time, which is important. All right, I think that covers everything about the case and everything inside the case. Next, I'd like to talk about the monitor. So I have been researching gaming monitors for years, and I have been watching videos of people who play video games at 60 hertz and at 144 hertz and at 240 hertz. So this is the frequency at which the screen can repaint itself. So to say 60 hertz means it can repaint itself 60 times a second. 144 hertz is 144 repaints a second. Now with gamers, they say we don't want to see any screen tearing. We want the highest refresh rates. Resolution not as critical for gamers. Esports people who compete are usually competing at 1080p, which is 1080 vertical lines. I game on my systems at 4K 60 hertz. But like I said, I've been doing all this research, and I think there's a middle ground. And the right middle ground is what's called a 2K monitor, which is this one. It's 2560 by 1440 resolution, and it is 144 hertz. And it is well rated. It's a Dell. The model number escapes me, but it's like an SD2716, I think. It has adaptive sync capability, so your video card and your monitor can work together to provide the super smoothest gameplay experience. And we have gamed on it, and it's great. That's been fun. We've had some three-way Overwatch rounds. That's been great. Next are the input devices. So this mouse is a Logitech G602. It's the same one that I use with both of my gaming systems. It's the same one that Jonah uses on his gaming system. Now, some people scoff because it's wireless, but I don't like wires. End of story. They provide resistance, and they're annoying, and that's just my opinion. I will say that when it comes to keyboards and mice, people are very particular, and all due respect, if you try this one and you aren't a big fan, it won't hurt my feelings, because everybody has different opinions on these things. One thing I will say that's nice about this one is it has on-the-fly DPI adjustment. And so if you press this silver button here, you increase the dots per square inch movement, so it's more sensitive, and you can reverse it going that way. And little LEDs light up to tell you where you are with respect to 5 different sensitivities, and that's been a real boon for us, because then you don't have to go into your mouse settings every time somebody else sits down. You know, if Jonah wants to play at level 2 and I want to play at level 3, it's just a click away. It's been nice. So I have 3 Corsair gaming keyboards, and yet I bought a Cooler Master for this build. And I did that because it was really well rated, and I wanted to see what another vendor could bring. And it turns out this is a pretty darn nice keyboard. So it's Cherry MX switches. It's not very loud, but mechanical keyboards, pretty much all of them, are going to have a clickiness to them that is unavoidable. One thing that's neat about this one is this is your wrist rest is magnetic, and so you can easily take it on and off without, plastic detents that you have to move in and out, which can be a bit of a hassle. I personally like the wrist rest, so I've been gaming with it and typing with it on this system. I think the keys themselves are very high quality. As you can see, the keyboard is swirling in rainbow colors. You can download software. No, you can't download software. There are keystrokes that you can do to change the color sequence, color flow, one color, breathing, all kinds of stuff. I landed on this one and I left it in that setting. So when you first get it, it's just going to be a spiraling rainbow. I personally left it on that one because it was the best option in my opinion. So yeah, that's the input devices. Last, before we talk about the softwares, I'm also going to send the Power Strip. This is made by APC. APC has been around for decades. They are known as the best when it comes to power surge protection. This is not a UPS or anything like that. It's just a quality power strip. And that's sitting on the floor over there, providing all the power. So, in this section, I want to talk about how well this thing does under stress. So, I'm sitting right next to the system, and there is a fractional sound I'm hearing, I think, from the pump for the water radiator. If I look underneath at the fans for the GPU, not spinning. They're not doing anything. All these Noctua fans are just barely spinning because the system is not being stressed in any way. What I like to do though is run superposition, which is a synthetic benchmark, and it's kind of awesome, to see if we can hear a difference in sound. And I've got everything closed up, nobody else in the house. So once that loading bar finishes, I'll be quiet, and we'll see if we can hear things start to spool up. Not picking up any sound so far. I can see the GPU fans are now moving, but only slight. This has some statistics up here. It's saying that the GPU is 61, 62 Celsius. Even if it gets to low 70s, that's totally fine. Even higher in some cases. You can see it tells you that you've got the RTX 2060 Super. It tells you your frame rates at the top. They're kind of bouncing around a bit. I'm running this on 1080 high, which is one of the more stressful things you can do to exercise your system. I can hear fans. They're just there. They're not loud. I can feel some heat coming off the GPU. It's fine. This would actually perform better with the side on. We're not getting really good directed airflow. It kind of just pulling out the space right now. GPU is nice and chilly. I don't feel any hotness coming out the back. A little bit of warmth from the CPU. GPU is up to 69, totally fine. Like I said, it's maybe even as high as 80 is fine. And with the amount of airflow in this case and the heatsink design with 3 fans, it's just made to cool. Just really, really cool things down. All right. So it finished. I've seen it get 12,200, I think. So the benchmark doesn't give you the exact same number each time, but those are very respectable numbers. My Radeon 7 scores like 12,600, and my RTX 2080 scores like 13,000. So I mean, or 13,500. But in any event, the 2060 Super, killer card for what you get, and driving 1440p, awesome. So I've put the side panel back on just so you can appreciate that a little bit, because I think it's a sharp looking build. I don't think the video does it justice, but the dark tint with just the gentle color strobing off the video card, the cooler mastery on the CPU, this looks cool. I want to talk about the system a little bit more. So it's Windows 10 Pro 64-bit. It's what I use for everything. It's buttery smooth. I've left some benchmarks up here. The Superposition one, as you just saw, Heaven, Valley, these are all made by Unigine. Synthetic benchmarks. They're just cool ways to stress your system. Got Overwatch installed because, like I said, we wanted to play some freeway Overwatch, and we did. You'll have to log in with your account information. So the software's on there, but we're using our logins, and I'll set it up so you have to use your login and all that. One thing that's been interesting about this computer is it doesn't want to pick the right resolution immediately. Now I'm going to see if it happens, so we're going to do a restart. So this is when the system's coming up. Occasionally, at the login screen, it'll be some really low resolution, which looks terrible, not the native resolution. And I usually just log in, and then a minute later, it fixes itself. And that's not even every time, like sometimes. So look at that resolution, really crappy. So, yeah, look at that, silly, right? So, I'll just sit here for a minute, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the NVIDIA driver just taking its own sweet time coming up. If anything, I will spend a few more minutes trying to figure out why it's doing this. It's been elusive. I've rebuilt the system a couple of times. Let's talk about that. Why did I rebuild the system? I forgot I had already built it. When I say rebuild, I mean the software, like the full Windows install. Got it all built and then blew it all away and did it all again from scratch. The software that comes with the video card, it doesn't really come with it per se, but you can download ASUS software to control the colors, and it's not good software. I mean, I say that coming from somebody who works in software. They just didn't do a good job. So sorry to pause there, but see, now the screen is fine. I don't know why it takes so long to come up. I can tell you right now that the NVIDIA down here on the tray, that NVIDIA driver was not there up until the resolution fixed itself. So there's something about the NVIDIA driver is just not starting up as fast as other parts of the system. I don't know. But anyway, the ASUS software that you can use to control your video card colors is crap. And it's so bad that it will mess up your system. So I downloaded it for the first build, got the card to do this sort of nice rainbow changing of colors, and then rebuilt the system and never installed it again. It's just not good. And I think most people would agree. A lot of the software out there that controls the lighting on the RGB on any component is just not good. And in fact, I've got memory that's in my other system that can change color, and the software for that is resident when you're playing video games. But like in the case of Fortnite, it comes up and it says, "Hey, we think you've got aimbot software installed," and it's not aimbot software; it's just software to change the color of my memory stick. So you can't run with a lot of this RGB software in the background anyway. I guess what I'm saying is long story short, if you could resist the temptation of downloading and installing that software that controls your video card colors, that would be perfect, because it's crap. And So that's pretty much it. Didn't talk about the mouse pad. It's not something to write home about. It's just a SteelSeries. And again, they're very each person and when it comes to keyboards, mice, and mouse pads, very subjective area. So feel free to get a different one, but I will send along this one. And there's only one thing I didn't get for this build, and I'm leaving that up to you entirely, because it's the most subjective thing under the sun, and that's speakers or headphones, wired headphones, wireless headphones, surround wireless, headphones with mics, headphones without mics. This has a built-in 2-channel audio output for the mini DIN connectors that you would have on like Apple earbuds. It's on the back, and I believe it would work through the front panel as well. There's usually a headphone jack up here. So, yeah. Again, leaving that in your department, because, man, like I said, it's the most subjective thing. You're going to have to do a lot of research on what kind of earbuds you want, or do you want cans. Like I said, do you want a mic? Jonah games with a mic when he does Fortnite because he plays with his friends. In my other builds, I like speakers, but I don't know. So that's it. I will send along some antennas that I've mounted to the back here for wireless. They're magnetic, they're adjustable, and yeah, so however you want to mount those. You might want to experiment a little bit, see where they give you the best performance for the internet speeds. And I guess that's it. So I will be contacting you about this and boxing it up. Like I said, I will spend a little more time trying to figure out that driver issue, but I think I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, and it's kind of weird, so it just might be one of those things you have to live with. So anyway, hope you enjoy it. It's been great building it. And one more thing. I can't ship this with the video card inside it. And so I am going to do one more separate video on mounting the video card inside the case once you get everything into your house. The video card is just too heavy. It's just this big cantilever on the motherboard. It wouldn't ship well. Yeah, so it has to come in its own separate packaging. But like I said, I'll do a separate video on how to install it. It's dead easy.